Welcome to Corpstruction, the podcast of the Tulsa District, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. I'm your host, Brandon Parrish. When the Department of Defense needs vertical construction on military installations around the world, it turns to the Corps of Engineers. The person responsible for overseeing military programs and reporting that to the Chief of Engineers is Dr. Christine Altendorf. Dr. Altendorf, thank you for joining us today. I know you're a Lubbock, Texas native and grew up in Oklahoma City, that's correct? And you're an Oklahoman pretty much.
Yes, and actually I was born in Lubbock but moved away before I was one. So literally grew up in Oklahoma City all of my life. My family still lives in Oklahoma City and Tulsa, so I have strong roots to the Sooner State, although I'm a cowboy.
You are, right? Like all 3 degrees from Oklahoma State University,
Yes.
Which is where very many of our engineers come from. We have quite a few. I want to start and say thank you, first of all, for taking the time out of your visit here. I know you're touring Tinker Air Force Base and our KC-46A maintenance project construction, as well as some other projects. I think you've toured the air traffic control tower that was completed today. So thank you so much for taking the time and welcome to Corpstruction.
Thank you.
So in your role, you're seeing generally the 30,000-foot view of the military programs for the Corps of Engineers. What does it mean to you to be able to come home to Oklahoma and see it at the district level and see where the rubber meets the road, or the shovel meets the dirt, as we say, right?
Yeah, very good. Well, actually, I get two bangs for the buck coming back here to Oklahoma. I started my Corps of Engineers career in Tulsa District. So I started in hydrology and hydraulics and did that for several years, and I did do a bit of military construction engineering. I actually did some project engineering work both here at Tinker, Shepherd Air Force Base. So on one hand, it's really nice to come back. Although a lot of people have left the Tulsa District since I've been there, there still are faces that I see, there are faces that I know, and so one, it is like coming home. I also, as I stated earlier, have family here. So if I come to Tulsa or Oklahoma City, try to sneak in a little bit of family time, or maybe I didn't, but maybe get to a football game, et cetera, at Oklahoma State. So that is one draw, is just kind of coming home to family and then home to Tulsa District family. So that's exciting. As you mentioned, what I do now, the 30,000-foot level. And it's a lot of policy, it's a lot of seeing reports where things have maybe gone wrong or we have challenges. But what's really nice, and I tell people this all the time because they say, oh, you work at headquarters. I said, yeah, but the most fun is at the district. That's where the action is. That's where the work gets completed. That's where you are actually seeing challenges in place, but then you also can put in the activities to overcome those challenges and have great successes. And one thing that's been really good about this trip, what I was able to do today, was not just see projects in construction. Many times when I go out, in fact, almost most of the time when I go out, is I see projects that are under construction. So I'm seeing steel being erected, or I'm seeing concrete being placed. And one thing that was really nice today, I got to see some projects that were newly completed. So it's a little bit different where you see the project done, it's not under construction, and then you get to talk to the folks that use the project. And so today, some very satisfied stakeholders, and so that's nice because a lot of times, especially if we're behind or we had some mods where you might have some cost overruns, you get a lot of that during the construction. But when you have the final product in place and people are using it and it serves their purpose and they love it, that's really satisfying. So that's why I like to go to the field.
So far, what are your takeaways from your visit to Tinker?
Well, I came first, and I got to see, like I said earlier, some faces that I recognized, so I was able to catch up a little bit. What's going on with the district? What's the morale of the district? What are some of the challenges of the district? What's happening when it comes to hiring? Because there is a lot of work going on at Tulsa District Corps. How are we keeping people engaged and employed? How are we hiring? Making sure that the staff that we have on is not getting, stressed and overworked, because there is a lot going on. So I was able to get a feel, talk to the staff about that a bit. And then, like I stated, is get out and find out what is our relationship with our stakeholder, whether it's the BCE whether it is, the user of the facilities, whether it is, AFMC, whomever it is. What is our relationship? Where is it good? Where is it challenged? Because I said a project can have its challenges, and actually it can still be very successful, but it all depends on the relationship. So if you don't have that relationship, you don't have that partnership going on between us, the stakeholder, the contractor, the user, then things can go south really quickly. And so everything that I saw today, and I did ask everywhere we went, is, how are the relationships here? How are we reaching out? How are we partnering? And I think it's really strong in Tulsa District. I think that's been a big focus area. I think everyone knows the Chief of Engineers partnering is a focus area for him. And I think Tulsa District is carrying that out.
What do you see as the top areas of focus in terms of military programs that's coming out of headquarters, or that the districts need to be cognizant of, and what do the districts need to do to address those or execute those initiatives?
So one thing that we are focused on, we talked a little bit, is military construction. So if people are familiar with the military construction process, it's actually projects that are funded in the MILCON VA appropriations bill. And there's a very specific process that goes along with that. What happens a lot is on MILCON specifically is they take a long time to actually, one, start the design, get through the design, or get it budgeted, get it through the design, and then get it appropriated. And then by that time, 3 or 4 or 5 years later, many times the cost is suspect. And so one thing we spoke about a little bit today, and it is a big topic we're talking a lot, not just at the Corps of Engineers headquarters, but also at the Pentagon, is how are we making sure that the Corps of Engineers folks are engaged from really the inception of the project. It isn't just that somebody has come up with a cost number and then all of a sudden it becomes the president's budget number and the Corps had no role in it. And we found out that it becomes very, very problematic. So one thing we are pushing is that if we have a MILCON project that is in the FIDEP, the 5-year development plan, if it's in the FIDEP, that the Corps of Engineers is involved in a planning charrette. So are they involved in the charrette? Do we have the expertise, the economists? Do we have the cost engineers? Do we have the specific people involved as we are laying out what the project is? Can the stakeholders define clearly what the requirements are? Is there a site located for that project? Many times we get through design and the site hasn't even been totally decided yet. That's really problematic, and then it adds to cost. It adds to a project potentially getting appropriated, and we don't have the proper site to put it at. So we're really working on, I think, some discipline in the MILCON process, and it's not just the Corps of Engineers, it is a team event. And so whether it is MCOM for the Army or if it's AFCEC for the Air Force, do they have the requirements laid out right? Is it something that is workable and that the Corps has been brought in at the appropriate time to do cost? And then what's required for us is we go in at the 35% design and we do a CSRA, cost schedule risk analysis. And it needs to be a very good cost schedule risk analysis. And then we need to be able to commit to actually get that project awarded for what that cost estimate is. I think many people hear a lot of times from our stakeholders, we heard a little bit today, is it's not so much about quality. They're generally happy with quality. And a big focus area for the chief is safety. I think they've got a very good safety record here. But it ends up being cost, so modifications that go on during construction, and then really more than anything is the time increases. We're missing by 6 months or 12 months or whatever the case may be. And there's always a reason. Every single project has a story. There is a reason. But how do we discipline ourselves so we can actually start meeting BOD on the date we said was going to be BOD?
You actually mentioned earlier, I remember saying that, having good cost engineers was so important. And when you can find really good cost engineers, you need to groom them and keep them around as best as you can. And can you talk real quick about your experience having those?
Yeah, so cost engineer, you don't go get a degree in cost engineering, right? So you have to learn that skill. And I think many times, I think we have historically a little bit taken cost engineering for granted. And I think now where it's really, and I think it's been a challenge for a long time. I think really when COVID hit and then prices started skyrocketing with 30% a year, 35% a year, just for a variety of reasons. It's like, wow. And especially if a cost estimate was done before COVID, and then all of a sudden, hey, how do you go in and update those costs? Do we have the right people? The Chief of Engineers, General Spellman's been very focused on really cost engineering and cost estimation expertise. And so we have been trying to hire up enterprise-wide, but it isn't just about hiring up. It's not about just filling the slots. Are they the right people, and do they have that skill set? And that skill set has to be learned. And so what happens, and it's right now going on with so many areas in the Corps is, are we letting people retire, or are they retiring? And then we've kind of lost that middle area where we can teach, coach, and mentor the new folks so that they can become the new experts. We kind of have this hollow area. And so how are we making sure that happens? But cost engineering, I think, is a skill that is so necessary and so required for everything we do, and not just military programs. It's also a huge requirement on the civil work side. And so I think that we have to really focus on that. We have to be able to stand behind that, the products that they come up with, and then we have to live within what those cost estimates are.
Now, from the outside, it's easy to look at the Corps of Engineers and you look at the military programs and you think, okay, they build runways, they build barracks, they build training grounds, but there are a lot of other areas such as real estate and environmental, and you were talking earlier about interagency interaction. Can you
so how we're set up at the Corps of Engineers, I'll just lay out what our structure is. We have 3 areas in the Corps of Engineers generally. You have civil works, you have military programs, and then you have R&D, research and development. A lot of the R&D is down at Erdig, Vicksburg, Searle, at Champaign. They're doing the R&D and civil works. You can have a whole other podcast on civil works. But under military programs, I've got 5 sections. One is MILCON, as we talked about a little bit, right? So actually military construction, so the construction of new facilities. Then I also have a section which, believe it or not, has a higher obligation than MILCON annually, and it is a booming business, and we've seen a lot of it here. And it is, we call it our installation readiness division, but that is who oversees the SRM. So all of the O&M work. So anything that's renovation, anything that is not new construction. And so this year in 23, or this past year, we obligated across Air Force and Army and other DoD organizations $7.2 billion of R&M work. So restoration,
Wow.
Restoration and modernization. And we obligated about $6.7 billion in MILCON. So those are 2 of my shops. Each has an SCS in charge. I've got the environmental, which you mentioned. I've got an SCS in charge of that, and that focuses really on cleanup of hazardous and toxic waste. So formerly used defense sites, foods wrap. We also do, people don't realize, but we do mainly for Army, a little bit for Air Force too, is we will go out and we do a lot of the NEPA work that's required on installations, that's required for the Army or for the Air Force. We will take care of that on the military side. So that's about a $2.5 billion program. We do work also, whether it's EPA, Superfund sites, etc., DOE, and so it's a pretty vast responsibility. Then we also have real estate. Now, real estate is housed under military programs, but it does both military programs and civil works. So you can imagine all the real estate that's involved with civil works. But for real estate, we are the designated organization that is required to do the real estate for the Army. So, for instance, even like the privatized housing,
Right.
we actually work the leases, with the privatized partner. We do that. We do, recruiting, things you don't even think about. If you're driving in a town and you see a recruiting station, whether it's in, a strip shopping center, in a mall, or wherever, the Corps of Engineers has worked that lease for that recruiting station. Many times, recruiters live in small towns that don't have a military installation, and they can't find housing. So then we will lease housing for those recruiters. And that's just kind of a small example. All sorts of leases. We do all sorts of ag leases, all sorts of things that go on in real estate. And so that's housed under me. And then finally, we have IIS, which is the interagency and international support. So what happens many times, and you saw this really with the border wall, you saw it with, we do a lot of work for Veterans Administration, lots of construction going on with Veterans Administration, so another federal agency, right, that doesn't fall under DOD. I would say many times, especially with a lot of the infrastructure bills that have come upon us the last several years, they have been given a lot of work for their infrastructure, but they don't have the engineering support to take care of that. So they come to the Corps to say, Corps, can you help us with our infrastructure? We are doing quite a bit of work for the USDA, so Department of Agriculture, their ARS, their research stations. We're doing that. We're doing work for Bureau of Engraving and Printing. Lots and lots going on. And then we also do, that falls under that, is foreign military sales. So many times for other countries, where they're going to buy, for instance, they're going to buy, name the either equipment or
Right.
aircraft or whatever, and then they ask the Corps to come and do the facilities for whatever it is they're purchasing. So we're doing a lot, whether it's in Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, a variety of places. And then we also do quite a bit of work, and does not fall under foreign military sales. It falls under host nation, but quite a bit of work for the host nation in Korea and Japan.
Right.
So loads and loads of work that we're doing, not just for the Army, but really or the Air Force, but really for the United States and really the world.
Wow. Our chief of military construction was over in Korea working on
Yes,
Camp
he was.
Humphreys.
Patrick was in Korea.
Right. Yeah. So you were in Oklahoma in 2021. I remember because I was talking to Dr. Tukowski, and he said, Dr. Altendorf's coming down to receive the Lohman Medal, and that's a pretty significant award that the engineering program there gives out to highly deserving individuals. They certainly think a lot about you, and they think highly of you, certainly. Do you ever get down to Stillwater? Or
I
visit
do. I
campus?
actually have a sister that lives in Stillwater. I don't get there nearly enough. It just gets, sometimes it just gets harder and harder. I think the last time I was in Stillwater was not this year, but when we played Arizona State, and we hadn't played Arizona State in a long time, but my husband went to Arizona State. So we had a football game, not this past year, but the year before. So that's actually the last time I was in Stillwater. So that was in 22. But I did, obviously all 3 degrees from Oklahoma State. All my siblings, I've got 8 siblings. 8 siblings went to Oklahoma State. So we pretty much have orange blood. But I can't say enough about the College of Engineering either. And oh my heavens, getting that award was really an honor and a surprise. And some faculty folks that had mentored me actually, had reached out and said, hey, we'd like to nominate you for this. And I said, you're kidding. It's always kind of a surprise. It's like, what? It's just me. How can that happen? And it really was a great event, and it was a great honor. And I think the dean is an amazing guy. I think he's brought a lot of energy, right, to the College of Engineering and Architecture and Technology. And I think it's good. I think it's solid. Of course, I'm completely biased, right? I don't have a lot to compare it to since I got all my degrees there. But I think they do great things, and I think that looking at Tulsa District, I mean, you probably have a lot of graduates from OU, but you also have a lot of graduates from OSU, and just seeing what I saw today, pretty good educations are coming out of both of those schools, and I think they're doing us right for the federal government.
How did it prepare you, that experience there, prepare you for your career?
Kind of interesting. So I probably never said when I started my engineering degree that I'm going to work for the Corps of Engineers. I probably didn't really even know very much about the Corps of Engineers, except what a lot of people know, which is when you see a castle at a lake project, right? Because you're going to the Lake Eufaula. We used to go to Lake Eufaula or Texoma or wherever, right? And you're like, oh, what's that castle? And So I got my bachelor's degree, and then I got my master's, and worked as a research assistant. And then I actually got on with the university. So I was a full-time staff at the university when I was working on my PhD. So it took me a long time to get a PhD, but that was okay because I had a full-time job with benefits. You had the, you had everything. And then after finishing my dissertation, and I actually had a couple job interviews at universities, and I decided I'm not the publish or perish type. I'm not a researcher. You had to write journal articles, which I did for my degrees, but I'm more of an applied engineer. I like to see things get done. I like to, have a project and then a product at the end that you can wrap the bow around and then move on to the next thing. And research can kind of go on and on and on, and sometimes it's so theoretical. And so I actually knew some folks who I'd gone to school with, whether it was civil engineering or biosystems engineering, et cetera, a variety of people. And my area was, at the time, water resources engineering. And then I found they had an opening at Tulsa District in hydrology and hydraulics, which at the time was right up my alley. So I got on there at the Tulsa Corps of Engineers, and then it's kind of all she wrote. I was going to be there for 5 years, and now it's 30 years later, and I'm at Washington, D.C. as Director of Military Programs. So you can try to, mentally you can have this plan laid out in your head, but the thing about the Corps is there are so many opportunities. There are so many challenges. There's so many locations you can be. You can change your direction. Like I said, I started out in civil works. I did a lot of civil works throughout my career, and then now I'm Director of Military Programs. So you can kind of go a variety of directions and stay satisfied all the time.
So your father was an electrical engineer, right? And you said that when you were in school, you tended to drift toward the math and the sciences, and that was something that really piqued your interest. And we need engineers. So what do parents or of kids who are in junior high, maybe even elementary school at this point, what do they need to do, and what needs to happen so that by the time a child reaches high school or is getting ready to graduate high school, they're prepared to take an opportunity to look into maybe engineering or STEM as a field?
That's a good question, and I'm glad you brought up the junior high or the elementary, because if you wait until high school, it really is too late. Especially now, it's too late, and so. I think as parents, staying engaged with their children, watching what they do, watching, what their skill set is. And people know their child's personality pretty young, right? They know if they want to be analytical, they know if they're more artistic, they kind of know. And I think that they can, stay engaged and really make sure that there are activities that child is involved in. And USACE is pretty active. We're active, in schools, grade schools, high schools, making sure we're out there. There's different competitions, whether they are science fair competitions, whether it's robotics, whatever the case may be. But I think one thing we have to watch now, and I think we're all watching it play out, is how do we make sure that our engineers continue to learn as young people, or future engineers continue to learn, especially with AI out there, right? Things become very easy, right? I mean, you can go in and you can put in a few buzzwords and you can have an essay written that you didn't write, but it sounds really good, right? I have a neighbor of mine. They've got a daughter at 5, and she's great, and she's learning all sorts of stuff, and so she was all excited because she got this calculator, a calculator, basically with the 9 buttons on it. Nothing. Right. But she's also learning her math, right. So 2 + 7 or 9 + 6 or whatever, and so. She got the calculator and she's just punching it in. I'm like, no, you've got to put that away. You've got to add it in your head. And I think there's so much out there that's so easy with cell phones now, or iPads that children have, that I get a little bit concerned that if parents don't really stay engaged and make the child learn rather than just know how to punch something in on a keypad and get them a great, and the answer is going to probably be right on the keypad, right? But did they really learn? Do they know what they're doing? I know for engineering, what they always say, people kind of laughed if you weren't in engineering, and we take, exams, and most of our exams are open book. They're like, what? How could you ever flunk a test if it was open book? And what engineers had to learn is did we make the right assumptions? Right? Do you have the information? Did you learn how to learn? That was what college was all about. Did you learn how to learn? Could you make assumptions? And I think, once you get in there and with, artificial intelligence, all of that, machine learning, we've just got to make sure that our children will continue to learn. And that does take, whether it's by teachers, whether it's by parents, that one-on-one interaction with them as they continue to grow up, and have them ask questions and not just throw out a bunch of answers that they don't know what they are.
What would you say to, and you've kind of addressed this already, I guess, just by listing off some of the things that the Corps is involved in, but what would you say to recent graduates who are looking at jobs, and especially in STEM, to get them to consider service
So and that is one thing that we talked about that a lot today when we went to the various facilities, and what is the Air Force doing to make sure that they recruit the right people, and then they can keep the right people. And like I said, when I started, it's like, oh, I'm going to go work for the government. I'll work for 5 years, and then I'm going to go out and I'm going to make more money. I'm going to do this, but I was given a lot of opportunity and so much satisfaction, and that's a lot of you got to figure out what motivates people, and people are motivated by different things. They're motivated by the chance to get to move a lot of different places. I've lived a lot of different places. I've lived in Kansas City and San Francisco and Sacramento and Hawaii and DC 3 times, or DC area 3 times. Tulsa, right? Tulsa twice. Well, not counting when I grew up in Oklahoma City, but I was able to go to a lot of different places. I did a stint in Iraq and a stint in Afghanistan, and so just kind of seeing this world that's out there through work, and for me that was very satisfying.
Right.
Also the diversity of what we do. I named the 3 areas that the Corps of Engineers does, but under each of those areas, whether it is economics, or whether it is, planning and environmental, NEPA, whether it is, design engineering, or, construction oversight. You can find a niche, and then you can do that niche for a while, and that might be the niche you want for the rest of your life, or it might not be, and if it's not, there's other opportunities. So you've this, vast organization. And so I think a lot of it is do we keep our folks fulfilled? I think another challenge we probably have a little bit right now, and I'm going to sound really old school on this, but many times they say that people either stay or leave an organization because of their boss. Mm-hmm. And that's really important. And I think now with so much teleworking and remote working, we lose a little bit of that interaction of the employee with their boss. The teach, coaching, and mentoring, the friendships that you make with a boss. All of that's going on. And there's a lot of times I think people, someone leaves, and then all of a sudden 4 or 5 other people leave and go to where that person went because they liked working for them at this particular place, and they're going to go work with them again. And so I think we've got to really make sure we're developing those supervisors so that they, if someone coming out of school, they can really understand what the Corps does, what the opportunities are, and I'm talking, both technically, geographically, and then even Corps family wise. We just need to make sure that they understand that. And and there are going to be people, and I will tell you many times we have people that go away, mm-hmm. They go out to the private industry, and then they come back. And so that says something there too. I just think looking at how much work we do have to watch and make sure that we don't stress our people out and they become overwhelmed and they just can't take it anymore because we've got a lot of work and probably not enough people. And so, but you got to do that as you develop your relationships and you understand your organization and they understand their boss of how to keep that all balanced.
What would you say was probably the main thing that kept you in the Corps, or in you served with Immense Selection Management Command?
For me, I think it was, and I think it's kind of a double-edged sword. If someone were to look at my resume, that you could either look at it 2 ways, like, wow, she did a lot of different things, she's been a lot of different places, had a lot of experience, or you can look at it and say, wow, she couldn't really keep a job anywhere because she moved and moved and moved, right? But for me, that was, I've always had a little bit of wanderlust, right? And so I've always been able to, I never had like this perfect 5-year plan. It
Right.
wasn't, this is what I'm going to do and this is where I'm going to be. I always made sure that there were opportunities. Did I have an opportunity? And then if something came up, I was able to grab it. And so, it wasn't that I've got to be at this particular spot in 3 years or another spot in 2 years. It was just that something would pop up and it's like, that sounds really interesting and really cool. I think I'll go for it. And so for me, that worked out. But the thing about the Corps too, I think that is it all just depends. It's on your personality. There are people, I got to tell you, people that I love as a person that's been from place to place and has been a supervisor for a very long time. I love those subject matter experts that have been in their spot for 20 years and they know it better than anyone. I love those go-to people. And you know what? I met some of them today. Some people that have been out here, when we were at the airfield. They know their stuff. And they are like gold to somebody like me. So if somebody wants to do that, if they'd rather just stay there and focus and become the best expert they can, more power to them, and the Corps allows that also.
Do you think it's more where you are or what you're doing as far as that will give you satisfaction?
You know what? That's people independent. So I don't know. I can't say that. I will tell you, we talked a little bit about this today too, and we were trying to say, hey, for the air traffic controllers here at Tinker, how are you keeping these? They come in, that we train them, the Air Force trains them really well. How do you keep them after 4 years, right? How are they not going to
Right.
the FAA, et cetera? And they said, well, you know what? If they can get like a European job, right? If they can get this and that. And I've lived a lot of different places, and I have lived like kind of places that everyone's like, oh, that'd be the coolest place ever. But it's all about your friends' network and your family there. So, do you have those people that you're going to do something fun with on a weekend? And that could be in, Sapulpa, Oklahoma, or that could be in Wiesbaden, Germany. And so for me, it's not, I think, it's nice to go to really cool places and say, wow, I was able to, go snow skiing this weekend in the Alps, right? But, you can drive up 12 hours and go snow skiing in Durango, Colorado, too, right? And so it's really about the people that you're with. For me it is, and that can be anywhere.
So what have I not asked you that I should have asked you?
I don't know. I think you've covered a lot, and I think what you didn't cover, I probably filled in. So I feel like I've been talking an awful lot. So I don't know. I'm passionate about the Corps of Engineers. I'm passionate, as I said at the beginning, about Tulsa District, and that's where my roots are. That's where I started with the Corps, and it's always nice to come home. So I think I could be a pretty good poster child for the Corps and sell it hopefully to other people, because it is a great organization to work for.
Well, thank you once again, Dr. Altendorf, for taking the time to do this, and welcome home again to Oklahoma, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your visit. I know you've got to head out to Arkansas, so you'll be in Little Rock District's bounds, I guess. So
we are, but Tulsa's doing some work there, so we're actually going to Ebbing Airfield, right? And so a lot of work on the horizon that I think Fort Worth, Tulsa, and Little Rock are all going to be involved in and that's, as I was talking, Foreign Military Service FMS program out there, and some MILCON out there. So lots coming up.
Well, thanks again, and it was really great. You were really informative and learned a lot about military programs. Thank you for your time.
Okay, Brandon, thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us for Corpstruction. Corpstruction is a production of the Tulsa District U.S. Army Corps of Engineers Public Affairs Office. This episode of Corpstruction was brought to you by Headquarters USACE Military Programs. Thanks for joining us again, and have a great day.